Hello and welcome to the debate. I'm Marzieh Hashemi. Thanks so much for being with us. It has been exposed that in 1987, the United States government gave sensitive technology to Israel to facilitate it in making a hydrogen bomb. Now, Washington handed over this information to Israel in order for it to make a bomb, but the United States inflicts sanctions and a powerful negative propaganda campaign against Tehran. Iran says it has the right to have peaceful nuclear technology, and the U.S. says no. Israel, which has been fighting against its neighbors since it came into the region just over 6 decades ago, is not only not punished for its nuclear weapons program, but is awarded for its aggression and provides with information so it can build a hydrogen bomb. Stay with us as we take a look at the situation between the U.S., Israel, and the hypocrisy that we see.
This is a declassified report by the U.S. Defense Department which details how Washington extensively assisted its stalwart ally Tel Aviv to develop a hydrogen bomb, a type of nuclear weapon. The 386-page report is dubbed Critical Technology Assessment in Israel and NATO Nations. The 1987 report says Israeli nuclear sites were equivalent to laboratories that played a key role in the development of U.S. nuclear weapons. It was released after a Freedom of Information Act request filed by a researcher and a subsequent lawsuit in September aimed at forcing the release of the report. During the hearings, the U.S. administration struggled to postpone the release of the report as the assistance is against both international and U.S. federal law. Washington has been criticized for covering up the report for more than 2.5 decades. The release comes ahead of a planned speech by Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu at the U.S. Congress next month. Ironically, the controversial speech is to focus on the negotiations between Tehran and the P5+1 group of countries over Iran's nuclear energy program. Netanyahu has said that he wants to specifically talk about, quote, the dangers of Iran. Iran, which is a party to Treaty on the Non-Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons, has been under pressure from some Western countries to renounce its peaceful nuclear program. But Tehran has been negotiating with the P5+1 in recent years to maintain its inalienable right to a nuclear energy program.
Negotiations on nuclear energy, this calls into question the reality that the parties with whom Iran is negotiating are all armed to the teeth with nuclear weapons. Israel doesn't sit at the table, but is effectively a key part of these negotiations.
The U.S. double standards in dealing with Israel's weapons of mass destruction and Netanyahu's efforts to torpedo a possible deal between Iran and P5+1 countries should be seen against the background of Tel Aviv refusing to join the NPT and threatening certain countries with a nuclear attack.
Israel had basically threatened to use its nukes or its nuclear weapons against Egypt during the Yom Kippur War. Like I've already mentioned here, Martin Van Crayfield, the Israeli military historian, threatening to use nukes on European cities.
The Israeli regime also has a dark record of disregard for human life and international law, particularly during repeated invasions and occupations of its neighbors in the region.
I'd like to welcome my guest to the program, peace activist and former U.S. Marine, Mr. Ken O'Keefe out of London, and the president of Middle East Research Center, Richard Hellman out of Washington. Thank you both for being with us. Well, let's start this off in Washington with Richard Hellman. In your perspective, sir, why would the U.S. share sensitive information with an entity that has not proven itself a faithful ally?
Israel is a free, democratic state. I lived there for 7 years, and I know that Israel is a free, democratic state with respect for the rights of all religions and ethnicities and races, and that Israel does not threaten its neighbors. And Israel does have a respect for international law, and Israel has constantly sought peace with its neighbors. It has a peace treaty with Egypt and a peace treaty with Jordan. It had a peace treaty with Lebanon until forces reported to be Syrian and Hezbollah forces blew up the government in a building one day, and that was the end of the peace with Lebanon.
Let me just jump in here. As an American, sir,
the point is,
I'm not talking about the neighbors. Give me a second, sir. Let me expand the question. Give me a second, Mr. Hellman.
One moment, please.
Give me a second,
finish
please.
the answer.
Mr. Hellman, you've answered that part of the question. Understand about the neighbors. I want to expand. As an American yourself, sir. As an American, do you not see it as a problem? Mr. Hellman,
I want to finish the answer.
Mr. Hellman, you have finished that part of the question. You talked about the neighbors. I want to talk about the United States itself now.
Yes, I'm finishing the answer. Here is the
Go
finish.
ahead.
Here I am finishing the answer right now. If you stop talking, please.
Go ahead and answer the question.
You're the moderator, aren't you? You don't have to make the case, please.
Answer the question, sir.
The point is, the point is that unlike the government in Iran, not the people or the nation of Iran, but the government in Iran, Israel has not threatened genocide against Israel, the Jewish people, and America, as the Iran rulers have continuously done.
Okay, Mr. Hellman, the question that I was talking to you about.
One moment, I'm
no,
finishing.
you're going to answer the question, or I'm going to go on. The question I asked you, the second part of that question was, as an American, do you feel that it is okay for such sensitive information to be shared with an entity such as Israel? Yes or no?
All of the information is not out yet, but in fact, the problem with Iran developing weapons is that it is sponsoring terror, it's sponsoring dictatorships, it's persecuting its people, it's imprisoning Christians, it's persecuting Baha'is.
Okay.
That's the problem.
Mr. Hellman, as far as I know, we're both speaking the same. As far as I know, we're both speaking the same language. But you're not answering the question at hand.
I'm not done.
Turning to Mr. O'Keefe, I will not have you. You will stick with the program, Mr. O'Keefe. Mr. O'Keefe, I want your comments on the question. What I wanted to know, as an American, basically, is it okay for this type of sensitive information to be shared with any entity, especially when we look at Israel's history as far as its relations with the United States, whether we're looking at the Pollard, the spy situation, or we're looking at the USS Liberty? Your take, sir.
Well, you know, what we've just heard is the talking points of the State Department and the propagandist machine that we see that controls the mainstream media. And ultimately, it's just one lie after another. It is not only illegal, but it's immoral that the United States would have used nuclear weapons in the first place, obviously Hiroshima and Nagasaki, but then to share that technology with an entity like Israel, an entity which has been involved in so many nasty events in its history that it beggars belief that we are choosing to ally ourselves with a state which continues to persecute the people of Palestine in ways that are so obscene. We see this in last summer when literally 92 families were wiped out, gone. They don't exist anymore because entire families were taken out. 500 children plus killed in the latest slaughter in Gaza. Still to this day in Gaza, we see 850,000 children being collectively punished by policies of Israel and Egypt, which is important to note. And this entity is also threatening to blow up the world if it feels its existence is threatened. This is on record. For the United States to have shared that with Israel is an affront to all of the good people of America. And it also bears mentioning that the policy towards Israel isn't so much America favoring Israel itself. It's the fact that Israeli agents have hijacked the American nation through AIPAC and other means, through the banking and financing sector. And they basically own the U.S. Congress. And this mouthpiece you have in Washington is simply a mouthpiece for a foreign entity.
All right, well, let me go back to Washington, get Mr. Hellman back in on this. Mr. Hellman, when we look at what some of the comments that Mr. O'Keefe has made, if we're looking at a sovereign nation, for example, like the United States, does it occur to you at all that at times it appears that it is Tel Aviv that is pulling Washington in certain directions? For example, by giving sensitive information to an entity like that, how dangerous do you see it, or do you see it being dangerous at all to the United States itself?
It's not dangerous at all to the United States because Israel is the United States' strongest ally and friend in the Middle East, if not the world. And in fact, I would say that it's interesting that President Obama has criticized the coming speech of Prime Minister Netanyahu in the Congress, and there is a political debate right now about that issue. And in fact, President Obama's emissaries, including Valerie Jarrett, his closest political confidant, has helped him to send letters to President Rouhani and receive replies. So the president is trying very hard to make a deal with Iran, but in fact, it's dangerous to the U.S. because Iran is developing missiles that could hit America. They already put a satellite in space. So it is very dangerous to the United States, but Israel is part of our defenses, frankly, and Israel, it does respect human rights. And if you want to talk about who has killed whom,
is Israel a peaceful? Is Israel a peaceful entity, sir?
Yes, Israel is a peaceful entity, but let's look at the dictator of Damascus, Bashar al-Assad, who is backed by the
issue,
Iran
Mr.
regime.
Hellman, we can talk about Syria, we can talk about Iran, we can talk about all these countries when that is the subject at hand. Sir, you will stick to the subject tonight. Trust me on that. Going back to London and Mr. Ken O'Keefe.
Wait a minute.
Going back to London and Mr. Ken O'Keefe. Mr. O'Keefe, when we look at the situation, and we have our guest in Washington talking about a peaceful entity being Israel, but when we see that the existence over the last 6 decades of so has been constantly, basically fighting with its neighbors up until the time right now, and we saw what happened last summer. We saw what happened last summer in Gaza. Tell me the danger, if you think it is, of an entity like that being given basically the technology for an H-bomb.
Well, again, so many lies have just been trotted out, and that's why this person in Washington can pretend as if you're not being a moderator when in fact you're only restating facts. Let's look at the Lavon affair, where Israel was caught trying to instigate a problem with Egypt. Let's look at the USS Liberty. It wasn't so safe for Americans then. 34 American sailors were murdered and 171 injured, and Israel did its best to sink the USS Liberty, and they failed in that. And that's the only reason why the nuclear-armed Phantom jets that were launched towards Cairo weren't used, because the Liberty did not sink, and survivors were able to tell the tale. It wasn't safe on 9/11 either, when we had Mossad agents who were told of the event, had foreknowledge of the event, were there filming the event, and everyone who was arrested on the day of 9/11 was an Israeli. There were no Arabs. You don't even have any decency. I did not interrupt you through all of your rubbish. You are a chicken hawk. You are a chicken hawk traitor.
You're the one.
And you're rude.
You're the one hiding.
I listen to all of your lies.
Hiding in London.
I listen to all of your lies.
You're the one hiding in London.
I've come back to the States.
But when you
did you fight in the military?
You're not
I'm an ex-Marine who actually fought. You are a coward. Listen to you.
Let me go back to Washington.
Have you ever been in the military?
I don't know what you did, but
have you ever been in the military? How dare you? I've served in combat, you chicken hawk coward.
All right, let me go. Ken, stay with me. Going back to Washington, Richard Hellman. Mr. Hellman, when Mr. O'Keefe talks about the USS Liberty, which I believe occurred in 1967, and we look at this situation with the information about the H-bomb being given in 1987, I believe, 20 years, just 20 years after what many people would say was an attack on the United States, because Americans were killed on the USS Liberty by the Israeli Air Force. As an American, do you think it's okay that your country would share information with many Americans, if they had the facts, I'm sure would call an enemy for killing American sailors?
That is not the subject today. I could debate what happened with respect to the Liberty to the satisfaction of anyone but a 9/11 denier like O'Keefe in London, whatever he's doing over there. But I have to tell you that that today we have to look at what Iran is doing and how Iran is being aided by North Korea, perhaps by the likes of A.Q. Khan, the developer of the Islamic bomb, and by German and other businessmen.
Mr. Hellman,
And so,
Mr. Hellman,
I would
is
say
it that difficult?
I would say to the
is
rulers
it that
of
difficult
Iran,
for you to stay on the subject at hand? Is it that difficult for you to address the issue at hand, that we have gone from the situation in Israel, now we're talking about Syria or North Korea or Iran? So just stick to the subject at hand, and believe me, at Press TV, we are
Yes.
definitely,
Yes.
you can talk anytime when that is the
Yes.
subject. When it is Iran, you can
Yes.
criticize Iran and
Yes.
Syria and anywhere else.
Yes.
But however, the subject is
Yes.
something else tonight.
Yes.
Answer the question, sir.
Yes, yes. So the answer is Israel is a friend and an ally. Iran is a declared enemy. We want to make peace with Iran. The people in the nation want to make peace, but the regime in Tehran does not want to make
The
peace.
question,
So
sir,
the
I will
time
repeat the question
come-
at hand. The question, sir, was that in 1987, when we are talking about this report, so definitely the question is apropos to the subject at hand. In 1987, just 20 years after the USS Liberty attack that the Israeli Air Force initiated against an American ship and killed American soldiers, do
That's
you
not-
not think that it is odd as an
That's not the
American
whole
that your
story.
country then provided
not
this
the whole
sensitive
story.
information to an entity
Listen.
that killed its
Listen.
own
Listen.
military
Listen.
troops? This is the question at
Listen.
hand, sir.
Listen, if you want, listen. In fact, Israel has always been a good friend and ally of America. I could debate the Liberty incident, but that's a separate
Please
thing.
answer the question.
There
Then
was
please
blame
give
on
me a
both
sentence
sides,
about
but
that,
I
sir,
have to-
because it is related.
Yes, I will answer the question clearly. I believe that if as this report purports to substantiate, that in fact the United States did provide help to Israel, and if in fact Israel has developed nuclear weapons which prevent its much more numerous and hateful and dictatorial anti-democratic neighbors from erasing Israel, I would say thank God Israel is still alive, and Israel has said it will not use nuclear weapons preemptively or against its neighbors, and so Israel is in compliance if indeed it has the nuclear weapons, which it
Okay.
hasn't declared yet.
All right.
I don't think that's a problem. In fact, I think it's what's keeping Iran at bay a bit from developing the nuclear weapons to carry out its genocidal threats against Israel
All right.
and America.
Okay.
I think
Well,
Iran has to look
Mr.
at Iran has to
Mr. Hellman, thank you. You answered the question. Mr. Ken O'Keefe, when we look at the situation, again, going back to 20 years prior to this information, 1967, and what happened on the USS Liberty. And of course, after that, we saw with Jonathan Pollard, and we have seen so many examples through the decades. With what Mr. Hellman is saying, as an American, is it logical that, on the one hand, a foreign entity seems to be above American interests here? How do you explain, and it's not, of course, only Mr. Hellman, but we're seeing more and more of this, even right now that he had brought up the situation with President Obama and not wanting Netanyahu to come and speak, however he is speaking at Congress. It seems that the United States has become subservient to Tel Aviv.
Well, the first thing I have to say is that this man is extremely repugnant, and he'll probably interrupt me again despite the fact that I have had to endure the nonsense lies that he is stating. The first thing I'll say is that I'm an ex-Marine who served in the infantry in a war. I don't know who this man is, but I doubt that he fought for his country. He's a chicken hawk coward who is actually serving a foreign interest.
No, I did.
Israel had identified target number one for some time. You are a repugnant man, and you can't even keep your mouth shut.
Your business, I wasn't.
Here you go again. Right. And this is all you can do. Well, then you have no business insulting a fellow service member who has served in combat as well. So if you are so disgraceful that you disregard and disrespect somebody because they have opposing views when in fact they served in the U.S. military, then shame on you on every single different level there is.
Go ahead. Can you answer the question?
Now, getting back to what I was saying, the fact is that Israel and its policies are American policies. First point that should be made is that the war in Iraq was a war for Israel. This was identified in Oded Yanan's strategy for Israel in the 1980s. Iraq was identified as target number one, and that war was always based on a pack of lies coming from Israeli sources or dual national sources. The so-called dodgy dossier was the excuse used to justify this. The same people who produced that lying propaganda to justify the invasion and occupation of Iraq are the same ones lying about Iran's farcical, mythical Iranian nuclear weapons program. It does not exist.
I just want to give people time. Ken, stay with me, please. Richard Hellman, 1 minute. One minute, please. We have left. You give me your last 1 minute.
In fact, I'm just going to say that Israel gave America advice that they should not, that George W. Bush 43 should not invade Iraq. Israel thought it was a mistake, although Israel was not involved.
God.
And in fact, Israel is always against war. But right. Israel is beset by 200 million Muslims all about, and by most of the regimes who will not make peace with Israel. But I look for the day when Iran will forswear nuclear weapons and the Iranian people and nation will make peace with Israel and with the rest of their neighbors.
They've done that over and over.
All right, and 1 minute, last minute, Ken O'Keefe, go ahead, sir.
Iran, from the Supreme Leader Ayatollah Khomeini to the current Supreme Leader, have all said the same thing, that nuclear weapons are haram, it's an affront to God, and it's only countries like the United States, Britain, France, and all these hypocrites that are developing nuclear weapons in the United States using them as well. America has been hijacked. Netanyahu coming to the U.S. Congress is perfect. I'm very happy about this because it is going to force the genuine American patriots who swore to uphold the U.S. Constitution. You need to face the fact that the Founding Fathers were right about the enemy inside the gate. Your nation has been hijacked. Congress is nothing but a den of traitors. This man in Washington is a chicken hawk who wants to send more American sons and daughters off to another war for Israel. It's not enough for him that more than 22 American service members a day are committing suicide. He wants more. He wants more Americans to die for Israel.
I'm so sorry, both of you, but we are definitely out of time. I'd like to thank peace activist and former U.S. Marine Ken O'Keefe out of London and the President Middle East Research Center, Richard Hellman, out of Washington. Thank you so much for being with us. Also, viewers, hopefully you're joining us right here, same time, same place on The Debate tomorrow. Goodbye.